Welcome back to McNulty's Book Corral. Today we're going to take a look at 3 biographies of historical figures and historical events for younger readers. They date from my childhood, but they have some similarities to the types of books that are being done today. The first one we're going to look at is Custer's Last Stand by Quentin Reynolds, and this is my copy. This was part of the Random House Landmark series. It had a logo on the top here. This was book number 20 in Random House's Landmark series. This is one of the better known books. It's kind of a collector's item for Custer fans because this is one of the first books that perhaps a lot of people interested in Custer would read in their childhood. It was in print for a very, very long time. I don't know if it still is. I don't think so. So the books were fictionalized biographies of these figures, and I'm going to read to you the first paragraph of this, just so you can get an idea. The target audience, I'm suspecting, was between 8 and 10, maybe 11, but really a younger audience. And the first chapter begins with this statement. When George Armstrong Custer was 4 years old, he had a dream. And less than 20 years later, the dream came true. This is how it happened. So throughout the book, there are lots of bits of dialogue that the author never could have known about, that they're not documented. So they're fictionalized, they're suppositions, and there are references to the tone of voice given, obviously. He said sarcastically, I'm making that up. I don't have an example in front of me, but they don't know that. They don't know what the tone of voice was when the characters were talking or whatever. But they fictionalized the entire life of Custer up through the Little Bighorn, and he doesn't whitewash it. So the end of it, though, is a bit fanciful. And I'm going to read you on page 180, the paragraph about Custer's death. And it goes like this. 2 bullets hit Audie at the same time. Audie, of course, was General Custer's nickname. He wheeled toward Tom, Custer's brother, and reached out a hand. Tom was hit at the same moment. He swerved toward Audie. They died as they had lived together. Of course, we don't know that they died at exactly the same time, on and on. There are many suppositions throughout the book. In fact, the book is entirely suppositions. Yet it's very well written for younger readers, as it should have been. You would expect that from Quentin Reynolds. Now, Quentin Reynolds, and all 3 of these books have the same aspect to it, is that all 3 of these books were written by notable authors. Quentin Reynolds, and I took some notes here, Quentin Reynolds was a football player with the Brooklyn Lions in the 1920s. He was an actor, he was a writer, and he worked on the screenplay for a very famous Jimmy Stewart movie called North Side 777. So Quentin Reynolds was not just a work-for-hire guy. He was a guy with a positive reputation. He was well known during his lifetime, and he's almost entirely forgotten now, perhaps, except for this book. This book is a bit of a collector's item because a lot of people this is the first book they read about Custer. It was the first book I read about Custer, and so forth. But it does its job. It does it quite well. So biographies for younger readers. So if you would come across this, would I recommend it for an audience today? Yes. If you're an adult giving it to a younger reader today, let them know this is perhaps not entirely well researched, or doesn't have the benefit. Let me put it this way: the benefit of modern research. Readers today will understand that. But a good book to introduce you to the Custer myth, and that's the key here. This is the Custer myth, and it works well enough. I think it works fine. So there's that one. Now we're going to take a look at the second of the 3 in the Landmark series that I have. I only have the 3 out of, I don't know, there were maybe close to 100. I'm not really sure. Remember the Alamo by Robert Penn Warren. Now, everybody knows that Robert Penn Warren, of course, was the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet and the author of All the King's Men. Robert Penn Warren was a highly regarded writer during his lifetime. He's not entirely forgotten today like these other 2 writers are. Obviously, Robert Penn Warren, All the King's Men, I believe, is still in print. So this is Remember the Alamo. And the book is almost identical in its approach as the one by Quentin Reynolds. Chapter 1 is called How the Alamo Got Its Name, and this is the first paragraph. The story of the Alamo is a story of courage. It is a story of the simplest kind of courage, of a bitter and unflinching fight against overwhelming odds to the last man. So there we have a hook for younger readers to get involved in the story. Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie, all of the members of the Alamo are well represented here. And again, the same aspects, the same fictionalized aspects of the dialogue and so forth are present in this book as in the one about Custer. This is a common thing with historical biographies for younger readers, and perhaps for some of the older readers today. Even today, this is still done this way. It's a good book. Now, this book and the next one, by the way, I want to tell you, these 3 books in my collection stem from being purchased in 1965, and I can tell you where my mother bought them for me. She bought them in the very small book section of Montgomery Ward's. Montgomery Ward's is a retail outfit like Weebles that nobody in the modern audience knows what I'm talking about. But anyways, and I know that because I wrote my name in it, and there you go. So I know when I received these in 1965 at about the age of 9 or 10. So anyway, my interest in this obviously stems from Fess Parker, as does the next one. Fess Parker played Davy Crockett in the Disney film, and he would go on to play Daniel Boone, which is the next book I have in the series. So you have Custer, you have the Alamo and its characters, including Davy Crockett, and then you have Daniel Boone, all because of Fess Parker. And that's a good thing, because, sometimes motion pictures spark your interest in the reality of those historical characters in those events. So same thing here. Would I recommend it? Yes, I would recommend all 3 of these books for younger readers, as long as you're telling them this is something that was, let's say it's not complete. The research materials we have today are much more extensive than they did then, but they did a good job with what they had, fictionalized it for younger readers and made it appealing to them, which is the goal here. The goal here is to make history appealing to younger readers. They need to be interested in that. They need to learn about the past. Finally, Daniel Boone, John Mason Brown. John Mason Brown is a very interesting character. I have a letter from him, by the way. I should have pulled it out. I have an actual letter from him from way back when. John Mason Brown was born in 1900. He died in 1969. Quentin Reynolds, I forgot to mention, was born in 1902 and died in 1965. And then Robert Penn Warren was born in 1905 and died in 1989. John Mason Brown. Today, all right, so he was a drama critic. So he was doing reviews of Broadway shows and so forth and so on, and other types of things too. So he was a highly respected critic when he wrote this. All 3 authors at the time these books were published were well-known authors. John Mason Brown and Quentin Reynolds are forgotten today, mostly. Robert Penn Warren, I think he's still out there and has some books in print. So I don't know if these books are in print, by the way. I don't think they still are. So Daniel Boone, and it's exactly the same thing. Let's take a look at chapter 1, which is called Imprisoned in a Wagon. And it begins this way. As he jolted on his wagon seat, stopping and starting his horses and stopping them again, Daniel Boone was not happy. For irksome hours, day after day, his impatience had grown while he waited for the engineers far ahead to chop out of the Pennsylvania forest, the bumpy road over which he was traveling, simplifying the events, putting the reader in the events as if the author has firsthand information on what was happening, what they were feeling, what they were saying, what they were thinking, and so forth, to bring a younger reader into the idea of reading history. That's the way it should be done. Today, of course, I think they would put a disclaimer at the beginning saying this is a fictionalized account for younger readers or whatever. Again, these books are quite entertaining to read still. published in the 50s and 60s. They were widely available in a variety of stores. So we took a look back today at a couple of historical figures from the past for younger readers. I may cover some other books for younger readers in the future, including some modern books for younger readers. Until then, until next time, stay well, stay happy, feed your brain, read a book.